Alrighty, I am so excited for today. I mean, New Year's Day, and one of my favorite humans I have met last year. So we got Colette. Welcome.
Hi.
We're so happy to have you here.
I'm
I've been
so happy
hearing
to
about
be
you.
here.
Yes, I've been hearing about you from Sarah for so long. I love being able to meet you in person now. Oh, well, virtual.
Likewise,
Yeah.
BE. I heard a lot about you from your beautiful, amazing, incredible daughter, who I was very fortunate to have on retreat, last August. And I
I
heard so
know.
much about you. And when she invited me to come and chat to you both, I was like, I'm going to get to meet your mom. Yes, please.
Oh. Well, that was when you went to her retreat in Portugal, right, Sarah?
Oh, yeah. And it was so great because it was right in the middle of our travels. And it was something that I had no idea I needed, was to be traveling through Europe for a couple weeks and then pause for Colette's retreat, where it was such a grounded, sunken, present pause with the meditations and embodied flow, which I had no idea what embodied flow was at the time. And then to keep on traveling, it was this beautiful reset in when you travel, it's just a lot of intake, a lot of sensations. And so that pause was so beautiful. And then the way you hold space, Colette, we're all just like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. And maybe that's a good place to start, is for you to share what embodied flow is, because it's something that us in the States, we don't really have a lot of access to, not that I've known of. And, you're from England, and tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, I mean, it tends to be known, it's not super well known, but it's spread through largely Europe and Australia, but actually was created by two American, a yoga teacher and I guess Scott had like a dance background and many different kind of psychotherapists and many different backgrounds. And the two of them came together. So it's Tara Judell and Scott Lyons that originally created the school. And Tara was California based, and she was a yoga teacher there for a long time, teaching in a style called Anusara.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah. So that was deeply rooted in, which is how I came to yoga. Was I feel very lucky that I came through the doorway of Anusara, because it's rooted in Kashmir Shaivism, which is the non-dual classical tantric philosophy. So that was kind of my gateway drug into the world of yoga philosophy. And Tara was one of the teachers that I first came across, really. And then she then came across the work of bodymind centering, which is the work of Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen. So the understanding through that lens is that all of the information is coming through the cells first. So it's the brain that is the last to know in that work, whereas most of everything that we do is brain top down, head first.
Top down. We think about it before we feel it, but it's not how our bodies work.
Exactly. And we're very, very
Yeah.
disconnected from our bodies, and we're very much a kind of neck up, certainly in the West culture, and that's how we perceive things. So yeah, she could, and the beauty of bringing body mind centering and tantric philosophy together is the tantric philosophy, it's that is what it is. It's about being a embodied spiritual being, and the understanding is that the whole body consciousness wakes up to itself through our bodies, through our experience. And this view is that the whole of your body can come online. You can come into relationship with your liver, you can come into relationship with your kidneys, and actually psyche and soma are intrinsically, of course, also one and the same. And the body is the site of psyche, which of course we're starting to understand and have a better, clearer vision
Psyche
of.
and soma. That's a good way to put it, right? How the body manifests things from the emotional state.
Yeah, and so a lot of the work, so it's essentially, it's a yoga school. So to circle back, but Embodied Flow is essentially, to answer your question, is a yoga school, but it weaves together somatics and tantric philosophy and the kind of tantric ancillary practices. So it's very much not just asana. We do use asana, And we have, when we've got it really has its place. So if we're really working to embody the bones, or let's say the fascia, or muscles, or kidneys, or even lungs, like asana can be a really, really powerful tool to be able to experience the shape from the inside out. So be able to feel the buoyancy of, let's say, like a balancing pose while we're in the mind of the lungs, or using the support of the kidneys when you're in a back bend. So in that sense, it's like somatic yoga, but you tend to go on a journey where you kind of get dropped into an immersive visual landscape. So really drawing on somatic tools of visualization, somatization. So we might use touch, sound, all kinds of different technologies to get you into the part of the body that we're exploring, and then allowing that part to express through movement. And so that's where the body and the unconscious starts to be able to have a voice through image and insight, as it starts to kind of, through your experience, you'll start to receive messages from the unconscious. You'll start to receive imagery and symbol and metaphor. And then, we'll go on this whole journey. There'll be free movement. There might be some asana. We might chant mantra. We might meditate. There might be some deep rest. And then at the end, there's often journaling or painting and drawing to then process the experience. So you could say it's more like embodied philosophy and embodied psychology, because you're really, and it's very much rooted in Tantric psychology, which is like, there's so many just wonderful concepts that really help us to, become a more whole human being.
It's really okay. Go ahead, Mom.
Yeah, I'm very curious about this. I haven't heard of embodied flow before. Are the poses, are they similar to what you would do in vinyasa or hatha or kundalini, or is it similar to you just combine them differently? I don't know anything about it, so I'm really curious.
So I mean, it depends on the teacher. Everybody will kind of, who's training on embodied flow, will do it differently. Some people only teach asana. You'll go to embodied flow class and it will be more somatic yoga. So the asana is the poses. So you will do the typical poses that you would find in, like, say, a typical vinyasa class, but it wouldn't be sequenced like on the breath. And, it would be, the experience would be more about experiencing the shape somatically. Which kind of feels, we're like, well, isn't yoga already embodied, and isn't yoga already somatic? And, so that's kind of an interesting sort of contemplation, really. We don't even have to kind of go down that rabbit hole, but a lot of it is top down, and it would be a more bottom up. But yeah, I mean, at the moment I teach a in-person group on Tuesday morning. I adore them. We've got this gorgeous community, and they're just not that bothered about asana. They're more interested in going into the journey and having the absolute freedom to see how body wants to move and respond to the stimulus of the guidance, to the imagery, the visualization, the music. So it all kind of is curated in a way that, and there's no imposition. So it's not, I don't instruct the bodies in the room. The bodies
You're
are
guiding.
responding. Yeah, I offer like suggestion and guidance. It's very inclusive, but it's really kind of allowing that kind of what's called pratibha in the tradition. So creative inspiration and embodied intuition. That's what's leading. It's not, and I'm not the teacher. I'm just there to facilitate an experience.
So in the class, like in the retreat, Mom, we would start in meditating and chanting in seated pose, eyes closed, and then she would drop in different suggestions so that we would feel more free movement and start to move in our seat, and then maybe stand up. And there was a lot of off the mat movement. If you look from the outside, it might look like people are kind of dancing in the room. There's a lot of
sounding like the ecstatic dance that we did at the retreat, almost, that you allow.
It is, yeah. So it is like dropping into your body and moving in different ways and feeling this freedom, but it is through the lens of, I think, tantric philosophy would be probably the way that I see a little bit of difference. But it is this like intuition from within, like you are guiding while she is kind of dropping little optional places for you to go into. It's very free and there's no restriction. There's a lot of fluidity in that space. And one part I remember you really talking about was to try to work your body in different patterns than you're used to.
Yeah.
I remember, like, instead of going into the same pattern that you always do over and over, start to create new shapes, new patterns in your body to release other things that kind of are stuck. Because we're always doing the same thing. We're not kind of learning and growing.
And often if we're doing the same thing, then it's still a top down, you know, it's like, oh, I know this, you know, whereas when we, and it's like hovering on the edge of the present moment, you know, like Adyashanti calls meditation hovering on the edge of discovery. And that for me, like, is a way to describe embodied flow, because once you notice that you're like, oh, I'm going to do a sun salutation or something, because I've not instructed that, but I've been like, I might suggest, you know, if you feel more like you want to work with asana, then, you know, feel free to move into a shape. You know, I might say something as broad as that, depends on who's in the room. And if someone goes straight into a sun salutation, maybe that's just because the mind has gone, okay, asana, I do sun salutation now. Whereas if you just wait and wait and wait until actually a more authentic response comes through, then you start to circumvent those sort of ingrained that programming, essentially, because we become conditioned in anything that we do over and over again, don't we? So it's then starting to open up, like, what else is available to me? And that, like, creating more freedom from the patterns and the conditioning, and the ways in which we move. That was a real experience and an opener for me, is that I can now move in kind of my movement vocabulary is so much more broad, and I can paint and move in so many different ways. And so I have so many different ways to express myself than before, when I just had, you know, one way of speaking with my body. Now my body can speak in multiple languages. And just to come back to the ecstatic dance, like, there is absolutely, I think if people have done ecstatic dance, then they would love embodied flow, you know, and a lot of people, so there's a lot of crossover for sure. But the difference is that there is the layer of the tantric philosophy is such an important part of it, and, you know, central really. And really the somatics is a way to embody that's what it is. The somatics is a way to embody the philosophy and to have the tangible felt sense of the teachings through the body. And then the other difference between ecstatic dance and free movement is that free movement is, and particularly when you're working in that somatic body mind centering way, the understanding is that your liver has its own mind, it has its own intelligence, it has its own voice. So once you attune to that, the kind of quality of movement that might come from your liver is going to be different to the quality of movement that will come from your kidneys or your lungs or your heart or your skin or your bones. So it's starting to kind of listen to how that part of you moves, whereas with ecstatic dance we're moving intuitively, but it's not as deeply somatic.
Do you think you could flow into some of the principles behind the tantric philosophy? Because I know a lot of it has been led into more of the sexual pleasurable space, and that was not what, you know, when you were sharing about it. It's a different lens, yes, in relationship, but it's a different kind of more expansive way to look at tantric philosophy in the non-dual lens.
Yeah, so Neo-Tantra, you know, is more around, I don't know the numbers, but let's say around 150 years old, that Neo-Tantra has kind of been brought over to the West and, you know, and colonized in many ways. But classical Tantra, it really thrived between about 800 and 1300 CE, Common Era. And it came after and was an evolution of classical yoga and classical yoga philosophy, which looks through a more dualistic lens. So the Samkhya tradition, which is what that classical yoga philosophy is, that's the umbrella it comes under. It understands that we have Purusha and Prakriti, spirit and matter, and that these are separate, and that there's a sense of transcending that kind of human experience to access the divinity, that kind of blissful, transcendent state of consciousness. And then non-duality or tantric philosophy is saying, yeah, we want, absolutely, let's access, the divine and the vast infinite spaciousness inside. Let's be able to hear the silence and speak from the silence and be attuned to what you might call God. But it's also about the immanent. So God, the divine, is expressing through form, is expressing through body. The body is not something to be escaped from or ejected out of, or seen as impure and dirty and must be cleansed and purified and, all of these things, which isn't to say that those kind of practices of tapas and, the more rigorous, intense kind of cleansing practices, for sure, like, we all know a good cleanse is makes you feel good. But it's more about what tends to happen is then that helps us. It can often in modern yoga context create spiritual bypassing because we're less in the world. So as opposed to, and Tantra was a householder tradition. That's how it was understood. So it was for people that had jobs, had families, and couldn't just go off to an ashram or go up into the mountains and be in a cave and just meditate all day and, make like Shiva. Like that wasn't, possible, but it was so it became incredibly popular because it was accessible for people at the time. They're like, okay, great. I can actually have my meditation, I can do all my mantra, I can do all my practice, and I can go to work. And that's okay because having a worldly life, so mukti bhukti, so having kind of liberation and freedom from samsara and suffering and, the kind of layers of conditioning and veils that stop us from seeing God or seeing the divine, but being able to also enjoy all of the great fruits of life. And that's where it kind of, verges then into the kind of sexual side of things. There isn't a huge amount of sexual practice within the main tantras, and you have what's called right-handed and left-handed paths within the traditions. The more left-handed were the more radical, and you would use pleasure and sexual practices and exploring the senses, and sensuality is definitely a big part of, I would say, the majority of tantra, because of course we're receiving and perceiving through the senses, and it's being able to become more sensitized is probably one of the main differences. The kind of nuance of it is that through the practices we're able to perceive more of reality. We become more transparent, we become more capable of holding more of life because we have a stronger energy body through the practices. And these are also practices. Tantric yoga, classical yoga is referred to as inner yoga. So there isn't any asana, the poses in Tantric yoga. It's visualization, it's deity practice, mantra, mudra, ritual. So that's actually, and the practices that you do are considered like an inner puja, an inner ritual that you're kind of offering to your body. And it creates, to work with these energies and to be able to encode and embody these energies of the deities is incredibly powerful and incredibly profound. And really the sexual side of it's a tiny slither of an incredibly complex and vast body of spiritual practice.
I'd love to hear some of your backstory. How did you get interested in this, Colette? How did this come about for you?
Well, it was, funnily enough, I came to yoga through online yoga in about 2010. And it's, it's so common now, but it wasn't particularly common at the time. And I'd dabbled with things in my 20s, and it wasn't so long ago that I realized that I went on my first retreat in Costa Rica when I was 29. I went on this yoga surf learn Spanish experience. Oh, it was a yoga retreat. I just didn't know that's what it was at the time. And you know, and then I got to I hit 30, and I just was my heart was broken. I, you know, came to yoga, as I think many people do, from a place of suffering, you know, and from a place of being like, I'm on my knees, and all of these practices of drinking and getting high and having sex, they're not working anymore. So I got to find me something. Yeah. They'd kind of resourced me to a point, but yeah, it was just like, I just knew, you know, like I wouldn't have been able to use those words at the time, but looking back, and I think, you know, whenever we're kind of being pulled into like a challenging experience, or if we're starting to move towards something else, there's a part of us is like, there's something more, like there has to be something more than this. This isn't working, there's got to be another way, or this is not what it's all about. And so there was that kind of deeper knowing inside of me, and I think probably going through like the intensity of the heartbreak, you know, like when you're heartbroken, you wake up and you're like, oh my God, again, you know, you don't want to have to wake up, do you? Because you have to like feel the pain again. So at the time, a friend of mine, we'd only ever met twice, both times at parties, high in fancy dress. And she'd been living in Canada and working at a yoga studio in Vancouver called Y Yoga. And there was a teacher there called Megan Curry, who many people may or may not know. And she was teaching Anusara. So Roxy came to live with me in my house in Lee. She came home and I was like, do you want to stay for a couple of weeks? And she didn't really know where she was going to be. She's like, yeah, okay. And then we ended up living together for like 4 years or something. But she introduced, she introduced me to a website called at the time Yoga Glow. And Yoga Glow had teachers like Elena Brower, Tara Judell, Mark Holzman.
I remember that. Yeah. That was like the first kind of online yoga community, right? Yeah. Yoga Glow.
And it was set up essentially by Amy Ippoliti, all the kind of main core of people that set it up were involved in the Anusara school. So it was really Tara and Elena Brower's classes that it was just healing me. You know, I was just like, me and Roxy would do the class upstairs in the loft room, and I was just like, what is this magic, you know? What is this witchery that these women are doing? Because it's working and something's really changing for me. And it was the way that they used language. It was the poetry, the kind of grounded everyday esotericism. You know, they were taking these kind of like this powerful wisdom, but translating it in a way that I could understand and made sense. And then of course I was moving energy through my body through the asana. And I just was like, I need to know how to do this. And so that's when I then that's a whole other story. It's a long story, but I essentially wanted to go find a teacher. I found my teacher in Lisbon at a Anusara yoga festival that just happened to be happening when I just happened to be there for my friend's wedding.
Divine timing, huh?
Divine timing, and it all lined up. And so my first teacher was a teacher called Layla Sadeghi, who I'm still very who I love dearly. And you know, we don't see each other so much anymore, but we're still in close contact, and I'm always eternally grateful to her. She's an amazing teacher and priestess and ritualist, and that's where I really learned and got properly introduced to the teachings of Kashmir Shaivism. And when I started reading it, I was like, don't really understand what's going on here, but something makes sense because it's very complex.
I love that. So what it was is you listened to your intuitive self, right? And I always say that's your soul trying to get your attention, and you listened and you followed, and here you are on this new path. So yes, very clear that you had that inner direction, isn't it?
And it was, you know, like you say, listen and follow. Like there was just no question. And I am a bit of a throw myself in the deep end kind of person, and I think that helped me. You know, there was like a kind of fearlessness of like,
immerse.
I just have to do this, and I didn't question it. You know, it was like something in me wants to do this, so I'm just going to follow it. And it was so random. You know, I'd like gone to meet a goat herder in Portugal that I'd met in silence in an ashram and I'd never spoken to before, like the kind of things that I
Oh,
said yes
wow.
to. uh, and I was also at the stage of my life where, you know, previous to that, I'd been like, never say no to a party, never say no to an invitation. So I was in a very kind of
Mm.
say yes to life place, as well as being like, something has to change, you know?
But so if before, when you were feeling challenges and heartbreak and, you know, distracting, right, with drinking or whatever it was, what would you do now using these tools? How would you shift through using these new learnings?
Great question. Yeah, I
Mm.
feel so lucky that I have tools now. um, yeah, I mean, I really do. I mean, first of all, one of the great gifts of the tradition, and that I think, you know, certainly in these circles of psychology, we know this now, is like, be with it. You know, I've got to be able
Mhm.
to, in some way and in a safe way, be able to be with the difficulty and be with the discomfort. And the tools that I have for that are nervous system regulation tools, knowing how to ground, chanting mantras that, you know, not only kind of, I know, access my vagus nerve and allow me to access parasympathetic, but also they have an intention encoded into them. They have magic encoded into them, you know, they have lineage transmission encoded into them. So being able to kind of call myself into what is it that, you know, I need to move through, and how am I going to move through it? And I have journaling. I know that I can, you know, strong exercise is something that actually really serves me. Like, I like lifting weights,
Mhm.
you know, like,
Mm.
you know, yeah, for sure. Like, drop me
Yeah.
into some somatic work, and, you know, but the
Mhm.
simple things of stepping outside in the morning with my bare feet on the earth and breathing the day in, you know, breath practices, being able to just
Ooh,
put
and
my
some cold
hands.
weather. And some
Yeah.
cold weather over there. What is it right now?
We're kind of fluctuating between like -2 and 6 degrees Celsius.
Celsius. So that is like in the 30s maybe for us.
I have no idea.
Yeah. But barefoot, like so like grounded and present. And when I was watching one of your kind of talks the other day, it was about kind of enduring the intensity of the cold barefoot while also feeling the pleasure of the sun on your face and being outside and being able to hold space for both of those, feeling this intense feeling and the pleasure of others. So it's like kind of, it makes sense in terms of like how you can apply that later. You know, just witnessing it is like you can find some gratitude in every moment, even if there's this like really heavy, challenging part of you that is experiencing that. This other part can also start to feel the light.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and where can we find those little, I mean, the word glimmers is kind of seeping its way into
Mm.
kind of more popular vernacular, isn't it? You know, just those like glimmers, those little moments of recognition, those little moments of, oh, that's beautiful, you know, just the way the light might be. I love the way I live in a very old cottage, like a 16th century cottage in the north of
Oh,
England, and it has tiny windows and I don't get a lot of light, and I'm used to being, you know, in places with a lot of light. It's taken me a while to get used to it, but in the mornings the sun, when it rises, reflects onto the cottage across the road and then bounces the light into my room and creates this beautiful kind of light show on the wall of the bedroom, and like just being able to just actually take that in, you know,
mm.
for, you know, a minute, and like, oh, that's beautiful, that's a beautiful thing, and
Yeah.
just see.
It's like you
Yeah,
carry the intention, right? To find gratitude in every moment. That's what you're doing. You're channeling that intention. And so you see it. Yeah. We talk about this all the time.
exactly.
And man,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's that openness to life, isn't it? And having that receptivity and being able to get out of that kind of contracted spiraling of thought, or the, you know, the kind of narrow place that we might find ourselves in, and just widening out and being like, oh wow. I mean, also sometimes, you know, I might walk into the woods walking in nature. I mean, it's just it's a no-brainer, isn't it? Like, get out with the trees. The trees are such medicine. Sometimes I'll walk through the fields and I'll just be like, where am I? Like, what is this heaven? Like, what is this place and what am I? Like, those moments, they're existential
it's like stepping
moments.
into awe and wonder and all the pauses.
Exactly.
Yeah, I call it finding heaven on earth. You found heaven on earth in every moment. That's what you're doing. When people go between lifetimes, they describe the most incredible vistas that are presented for you because you're there to just soak in every beautiful moment. And it is finding those moments of heaven on earth that you're describing to me. That's what it sounds like. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that openness and, doing that kind of work, PT, of like, going on into past life work and just having the openness and the willingness to go see. There's the Buddhist Pali phrase saying, ehipasiko, never say it, ehipasiko, which means go and see for yourself, and actually like how that allows us to then see more and experience more, because we're open to it. And there's a word in the tradition, it's called chamatkara, which is experiencing awe and wonder and being able to hold the intention to not just have that, but to amplify that, like you say, like look for it, it's everywhere all the time.
Yeah. Might be a good transition into this word intention and how New Year's is all about resolution, which we kind of talked about this last year, but I'm curious your take on this. How do you view intention and resolution, the difference between that as people embark on this, 2024 year?
The quote that comes through, which I have in my manuals for my students, is from the Buddha, and it says, the world is built on the tip of intention. So intention is just so incredibly powerful. The world is built on the tip of intention. We can change so much with that kind of clear guiding principle. And I think resolutions, in contrast, tend to be about how can I fix myself, or like, how can I,
what's wrong with me?
How can I be a better person this year? Because last year I wasn't good enough, feel like that's encoded into, I mean, for me anyway, that's definitely it's a long time since I did a resolution, but that's how I remember it feeling. Like, okay, I need to stop smoking, never have a drink again, be a raw vegan, I don't know, whatever, like the insane pressures that and it's pressure as well, isn't it? And I think whereas like taking this time, certainly, I mean, we're currently, I know this goes out on news, but we're currently recording this around the Sagittarius new moon and working in alignment with, cycles, so you can have regular ritual, so that you can sink into actually what are the energies alive in me right now? What are the energies alive in the world right now? What are the energies that are alive in the bigger cosmos? And what am I feeling into, and what do I know already inside of myself that wants to come through, or that wants to be honored, or wants to be met? And that's from a place of reverence, isn't it? Instead of a place of beating myself with a stick.
Yeah, and it's kind of in line with embodied flow because it's coming from within, like you feel it in here and then you're working out, versus like, what should I do? What's the external need that people want from me or I should live up to? So it is this like, to me, it feels like resolution is something outwardly that I'm trying to do because I should follow these societal norms or these expectations or these obligations, or like maybe a childhood, thing I think I should be doing, versus intention is that creative inspiration from within that comes, that you start to move towards, like that intrinsic motivation.
Yeah, like Pete said before about his intuition, isn't it? It's like getting it's such a kind of healthy, regular relationship with that deeper knowing, that quiet voice inside. Pratibha means to brighten towards, which I love. It's like, what's the thing that you are brightening towards? And follow that. Yeah.
Yeah, and the words are so crucial, aren't they? I mean, one is such a more to do. I resolve to set
Mm,
this. It's a heavier burden feeling rather than I intend to want to do
mm.
this. It's just so much kinder languaging.
Way more grace.
Oh,
Yeah.
so much more grace. And
Mm,
yeah, why can't people follow resolutions? It's heavy. It's burdening. So, yeah, I know we did a whole podcast on that last year, but this it
mm-hmm.
seems to flow into everything that you're speaking about. It really does flow nicely. And since we're starting the year with you, it's perfect. And you teach this, I mean, you do these workshops all around the world, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I do. And I just wanted to say one more thing about what came through when we were talking about that is like there's two practices that I do for myself and also offer, which is like just dropping into our bodies and maybe bringing our hands to our heart and then asking, what do you need? Like, what do you
Mm-hmm.
need and what can I do for you? I think is a way to be able to tap into, like, because sometimes it's like, well, what is my intention? I don't, because we
Yeah.
then it comes from top down, right? But tapping
Mhm.
in.
Colette, would you be, before we go into your different kind of workshops, would you be available to just kind of guide for a couple minutes?
Sure.
Allow us to receive that and hear a little bit of the dropping in to
Oh,
listening to
that'd
that
be wonderful.
intuition? Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I'd be happy to. Okay, well, let's take a little moment to just get comfy so you can adjust your seat.
Mm.
And just let your weight release down and soften through your jaw and all of that expressiveness in our conversation or in your listening or in whatever it is that happened before, just allowing that to now soften and dissolve around your eyes and your mouth and the hollows of your cheeks. And just giving ourselves a moment to land in our bodies. And bring your hands intuitively to somewhere on your body and trust wherever they land. And then let your hands be softer, as if you were cradling a small baby or an animal, just a real tenderness in your hands. And so that you open up their capacity to listen. And you also allow yourself to receive their kindness, really receiving your touch. And then wherever your hands are, just ask that part of you, what do you need? What do you need for the rest of the day? And trust the first thing that comes forward. Listen for your breath. And then breathe all the way into that part of you that knows. And you might gently lengthen your inhale and extend your exhale. And then just gently bow your head. So there's a humbling of your intellect to your wisdom, your head to your heart. And then this is a little layer that you can also add in. So turn your palms up as you slowly yield them away from your body and turn your palms up to face the sky, as if your hands were receiving something. And this can be more for what it is that you are offering to the world, to the community, to your family. And you can just ask, what is it that you would have me do? Show me what you would have me do. And then you can take that forward into your day or into your journal. And you might close with a little prayer. You might bring your hands to your hands, maybe your hands back to your body, just to seal the intention, the practice. Not rushing through anything, really sensing your touch, the weight of your body against the support, and the sacred dimension of your own being and your own knowing. When you're ready, just slowly opening your eyes and coming back into the room and taking in the light.
My
That
gosh.
was wonderful.
So beautiful. Thank you.
We're all
Yeah.
like,
Gotta.
My pleasure.
Just a sacred pause. It's so beautiful to drop in like that.
Yes.
Yeah. And even if you do nothing
listening
else.
to what you need.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. That was wonderful. That's what you got to experience, Sarah. That's what you've been raving about.
Her words are poetry, and it just guides you right in to listen to that intuition.
How many of these do you typically do? How many do you typically do when you're doing this at a retreat? I mean, you do one or more a day kind of thing, or how does that work?
Yeah, so it tends to be that we'll have like a morning sadhana. So sadhana is your practice, and that usually involves mantra and meditation. And I'll basically seed the teachings that we're then going to embody in the movement practice. So there's often, some kind of satsang, so the sharing of the philosophical teachings. Then there's usually a little break. And then there's usually a 90-minute to 2-hour movement journey where then we get to actually really explore and interrogate the concepts and the teachings through our bodies and through our experience. And then I just kind of layer those in as we go. So it's just like dropping breadcrumbs along the way. But yeah, I mean, I adore meditation. I love leading it. I love sharing it. It's, it's such a beautiful form of prayer and being in relationship to each other and ourselves. And so yeah, it's very powerful. And so it is often a big part of, and any experience that I share with people. And to go back to your question, PT, yeah, I have I've got a busy year next year. I've very much went through a phase of not really doing much in-person offerings. I did, my dear friend and I, Ricky Brodin, ran a training in Bali in 2020, and COVID hit right in the middle of it. So I had students that I owed a training to. People had to leave halfway through. And so I said, I promised that I will make this, I'll make this happen for you. And so that's why I created the online training. So the school is Samavesha, and the kind of signature training is a 250-hour embodied facilitated training. So it's open to anybody, but it tends to be people that already have a practice and have maybe got a training, though it's often a third of the group. It's their first ever yoga teacher training, but they're looking for something more than, they're looking for more than yoga teacher training. They want the philosophy, they want the decolonization, anti-racism, they want the trauma informed. Like there's 12, or I keep growing it, so it might be more than that now. It's 12 or 13 or 14 modules over a period of a year, so they get to go really deep, and it's, they get to integrate and regulate over an extended period of time, so it's not just like 30 days in and out, intense, intense experience. And I never thought I'd do it online, and I didn't know if it would work, and it was a total experiment. And we went in with that attitude, I was like, guys, I have no idea what I'm doing. I've never done this before. Let's see how we get on. And it worked so well. And so I did another year of it last year. I'll do another year of it again. I've given myself a year's break this time, because we'll do the 300-hour, and that's when we'll do some in person as well. So we'll have 2 immersive experiences in Granada, which is part of the 300-hour. I know, I was like, did you come? Come, Sarah. And then we have an island retreat, a Colombia retreat, and then we've got the 300-hour, the 250-hour. There's a group coaching program.
All right.
Yeah, it's a
You're
big
in
year.
it. Wow, so good. And you still have the membership, correct? Or
Yeah, I do. Yeah. So we have this monthly container. So the remembership is a monthly membership, and it came about because at the end of the last online training, the community were just like, this needs to not end, that kind of support of meeting and being together once a week online on a Sunday. So this is like a soft container that allows everybody to continue to be in the teachings, in the practices, in the community, and really supporting people to honor their intentions and to stay in practice. It's so easy to it's hard to make yourself go downstairs and sit and meditate every morning and, have your practice container and have the devotion of that, it helps to be in spiritual community. It helps to be amongst people that, share the practices, the teachings, the worldview, your heart, and that can hold you. So yeah, that's really what that's there for, and it's beautiful. With 4 calls, come as much or as little as you want. It's recorded, and much the same as we did on our retreat. So one of the special things about Portugal that I loved so much, so the first 2 retreats, the first was for graduates from the last few years, and so I said to the guys, I'll lead in the mornings, but you guys lead in the afternoon and the evenings, and let's just we ended up having a festival. There was just we had contact improv, we had shibari, we had dream nidras, kirtan, yin, so many things. So then when you guys rocked up, and I had all these incredible humans arrive for the second Portugal retreat, and there was so many gifts in the room, we then also co-created that. So I was like, I'll lead in the morning, who wants to do stuff in the evening? And so then Sarah and Hannah led the acro workshop, and Mandy gave a psychedelics talk, and Tina did the shamanic dream journeying. And so and it's such a beautiful part of having a circular community where everybody is offering, and there's not just a teacher and students. And I'm just not down with that, really, because to be honest, made me quite awkward and uncomfortable around my teachers, where I've just been oh, I don't feel like I can necessarily be myself because you're up there and I'm down here, which doesn't make sense for me anyway. So the remembership, the last call of each month, is community led, so somebody from the community offers.
That's beautiful. Yeah, and you could really feel that on the retreat, different than other ones where because of that it's not a big power difference from teacher to student, that it did feel more peer to peer. And so that meant you were more accessible, and it allowed for more conversations that were more fluid, not just in one certain area or one certain time. That the whole retreat allowed for much more circular conversations that happened quite often.
Yeah.
And I think you're able to facilitate that because you were dropped in.
Well, we all get to co-facilitate then, don't we? And we all get to curate the space together. And also, like, when I realized that, I was like, this is better. It's less work for me.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I love that. We'll have to use that at our retreat, Sarah. I love the
Well, we took, we did salsa. We did a salsa class, remember, too?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, it was just
Fun.
which is like community building, right? That just like brought everyone together in this great way, and even, I don't know, just added this beautiful layer to it.
Yeah, and like
beautiful.
I can't teach anyone salsa and acro, and then I get to learn, as well, and it's so much. It makes so much more sense, I think.
Yeah.
So where is the next retreat, Colette?
We've got one in Ireland for Imbolc, so for the calling in of the spring. Yeah, so that's actually Sophie and Sarah, who are graduates from the community. They came to me and said, we really want to do this. And I was like, great, let's do it together. So the three of us are kind of working on that. And so we've got a beautiful group coming together for that. And then Colombia, which is another student from the community, Juliana. She is a Colombian priestess of the highest. She's incredible. And she's invited me to go and partner with her and co-create with her at this incredible place in the Sierra Nevada mountains on very sacred land. So it'll be a mix of all of her ritual work and then the embodied flow and working with the indigenous culture and wisdom and people and practices. So that's like
Is there still space in all your retreats?
Yeah, there's a handful of spaces in Ireland, and there is we haven't launched Colombia yet, so yeah, it's all available. And what we'll do again, like that will be 3 to 5 nights, and then we're toying with going into the jungle and doing like an extra like 3 to 5 nights in the jungle, but just depends on the appetite of the group. So depending on what people want, we may well then offer that as well.
Exciting. And for everybody listening who wants to connect with Colette, we'll put all of her links and all the ways you can reach her. And you do have a lot of offerings online. And if people want to get a taste of what you do, I think the membership is a really perfect place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have loads of free stuff as well. I've got like...
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, there's loads of... I'm always adding free meditations, and there's classes, and there's tons of free material out there as well, which is there'll be links to all of that too.
That's nice. And you're very generous. You're offering our listeners an early bird special on Colombia even before it's announced. So I love that. And we're going to put that all in the notes. You're offering 10% off. And if you heard it through the podcast, another 5%. So that is very generous of you. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you so much for inviting me. And it's such a pleasure to sit with the pair of you. I hope I get to do that in real life one day, in person.
In person.
Yes.
Again. I think it will happen.
Yes.
I would love that.
That would be wonderful.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Happy New Year. I'm so glad we got to connect.
Yes.
Me too, love. Thank you so much. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year to you.